Hey everyone, it's SoCal Jeep Gladiator here, doing my first video on my brand new 2020 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. Okay, there's a lot of talk back and forth about pillar lights, and I don't know about you, but I saw those pillar lights that is on the Mopar website, and they do not look very pretty. What they do is they basically bolt in here and here, and it just kind of this big squared off assembly. It almost completely covers your whole cowl here. So what I did, and bear with me, this is my first video, and be nice in the comments because my 10-year-old daughter will be grading me on my performance. We all love the KC Hilite brand. So what I did is I bought the 7318 JL A-pillar bracket. Okay, now everything from the front seat forward on these Gladiators is basically a JL. So I bought the KC Hilite bracket for $74.95 on their website with free shipping. And also, I bought the KC Hilite 6308 wiring harness with 2 Deutsch connectors. Couldn't really quite afford the KC Hilite lights themselves yet, so I'll show you how I got around that. But anyway, these JL brackets and that harness works perfectly. So here's what you do. The cowling's not put back together yet, but here I'm just about finishing up. It just comes in right on the hinge bolt. You take the hinge bolt out, you take this out, we take the whole cowling out anyway to run the wiring, and then replace it with this plastic spacer and this hex head, and you put the windshield bolt back in, and boom, it's done. Look at how much better that looks like. That looks so much better. It's so small, it's strong, and I just went with the Nilites. These are the Nilites. I spent $19.99 on a pair of these. Okay, so whatever. But look, they work. And it's perfect. So let's start from the beginning. Here's what you're going to want to start your task. A heat gun. Some heat shrink Spade connectors. Some heat shrink tubing. Your lights. Wire strippers. And your tools to take the cowling off. I just used the Jeep, the tools that came with the Jeep to take the T40 cowl bolts out. I used a T47. It's important because not a lot of people are talking about this. The windshield bolt is a T47. Now, what I did is I put a little bit of electrical tape around it because I did not want my paint getting messed up. So bear with me here. I'm going to put this back together. I know, I totally sucked at this. I'm new. So I'm going to see if I can set this up somewhere where you can see it. There's really no place I'm going to be able to put this so you can see it. So I'm just going to do it. Okay, so there's a lot of talk about there. How do I take the windshield hen pins out without messing up the paint? Okay, because a lot of times in the factory you can see they painted up pretty good in there. So a little bit of electrical tape on a T47 and just gentle, easy pressure. Boom, out, done. Just gotta get started halfway. And that's it. So I was really worried that, oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess up, my paint. I don't know why these aren't black anodized like the cowling. They used to be like that. But as you can see, the focuses, look, it did not mess up the paint at all. I really don't think that was because of the electrical tape, but it certainly heck does not hurt. So put that in my little storage area. Now back to what else I was doing. Okay, so here's some important things too. Here's the harness that comes from the factory, from your auxiliary switches. A lot of people are saying, even on the KC Hilite's website, they make a mistake saying these are 30 amp fused. They are not, they are 40 amp fused. These two are 30 amp. The aux 3, and this is all in your manual, the aux 3 wire is the orange wire, 15 amp. This is also 15 amp aux 4. These are aux 1 and 2, I just don't remember which one. So these lights draw about 4 amps combined, so I only needed to do easily the 15 amp circuit. I can even put more lights on in the future up here on my grill when I get my new Rubicon steel bumper, and I'll still have plenty of room amperage wise. So what I did is I cut off the factory heat shrink, and here's what I did. As you can see, that harness is not super long. So I got my wire cutters, and if you go on the 12 gauge of your wire cutters, and I got the heat shrink tubing about halfway down and pulled on it, it not only did it cut and pull the part of the jacket off the wiring, exposing the copper, but it pulled the rest of the heat shrink off. I'm like, score. Then I used number red 22 through 16 gauge heat shrink Spade connectors, and I use a big piece of tubing and a small piece of tubing. Then I come back, I crimped and then heat shrunk the Spade connector, and then I laid the smaller heat shrink tube and I put the larger one over it, double wrapped. This is super insulated now, good to go. So I made that connector. Let's talk about the harness real fast. So here's the 63, oh, I don't remember what it was, I'll show you again. Here's a harness that came from KC Hilites. The two Deutsch connectors, one's already connected, and there's the other one going to the passenger side. When you lay this harness out, you're going to say, oh, geez, what the heck is this? There's this extra wires here in the middle. Now, if you're using the switch, here's how you normally would do it. The red would go to your battery positive. The black goes to chassis ground. Then it goes through a fuse. And then it goes to the end of the harness. This would go through the firewall. And this would go through a switch. And when you flip the switch on, this would lead to your accessory. Well, we're not using that switch. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to ignore that whole section over there except for the ground. Okay? This is what normally would have gone through the firewall and then provided power out. So we are going to take the wire that provided power to the accessory and plug that into the power output of the relay. So when I push that button, power goes to my lights. So the only thing I will use out of that center section is the ground. I'm going to ground this right here, and I'm going to then plug in my positive and make it all work. Grounded, waterproofed, sealed. So I'm going to pause the video right now, and I'm going to continue wrapping it up, and then I'm going to go over and the final steps, and it'll be done. All right, I'm back, and we're all done here. So one thing I didn't mention before is that to take this cowl off, you really want to take this antenna off. I used my 10mm open-end box wrench. It was a little too big, but it still worked perfectly fine. It's probably more like an 8 if you weren't lazy like me and didn't want to go back into the garage. So 8 or 10mm, take this off. The cowl comes right off, and I reassembled the mounts, right? It comes with this plastic black spacer and this hex head key. I don't remember what the size was. It doesn't say in the instructions, but it is one of the standard sizes that you would have on one of your three-way hex head wrenches. So again, here we go. We are looking at the KC Hilites 7318. Hang on, let me look. So yes, the 7318 A-pillar bracket with the 6308 wiring harness. Now, because I didn't use KC Hilites, I used my more economical Nylites. I did have to buy the appropriate connectors. So the KC Hilites comes with these waterproof Deutsch, automotive Deutsch connectors. So I bought these on Amazon. I'll put these, the link in Amazon in the description, and basically I just had to splice it into the wires. So my cheaper low-cost Nylites that cost $20 for a set, this was like probably $8 or $10 for the other side of Deutsch connectors. And as you can see, it looks pretty professional. Okay, so from the driver's side, it goes right down back of the cowling, And don't do anything funky with the installation. You know, the Jeep finally got smart and starts routing wires properly. I just moved this bracket up, I'm sorry, the insulation up, and just fed my wire right through there. That's my wiring job. This is the harness, it plugs in. I just zip tied it across back on top of the firewall. And then, of course, that wiring harness was way too long, so there was a lot of extra. So all I did is I kind of just ran it back and forth like an extension cord, zip tied one end, and then took my electrical wire and just kind of buttoned it up, made a big dongle. Remember, this is the fuse and the wiring that you do not use because we are ignoring the switch. And there we go. Everything is set. I plugged in the ground, the hot, and we're ready to test it out. So I'm gonna put it on pause real fast, and we'll close the hood down and test her out. Okay, we're back. The hood's closed up, and like I mentioned, I wired it to the orange wire, which is auxiliary 3. So I'm gonna go ahead and put auxiliary 3 on and get out. And there we go. Let there be light. Nothing's on fire. And there we go. So I'm gonna go over these aux switches too real fast. So in your settings, you have aux switches item. And right now I got them set to auxiliary 3. And yeah, there's your options: latching, momentary, battery ignition, or recalled last state. Latching means once it remembers its position, so you flip it on, it stays on, flip it off, it stays off. Momentary is push button, push to stay on, let go, and it's off. Right now I have mine set to the ignition, so when I turn my ignition off, my lights will not come on. So if I go back in here and set my to battery, that also removes the recalled last state because, well, the battery, when it's in battery mode, it itself remembers its own last state. And I can turn auxiliary 3 on, and switch stays on. And if you can see my light, my hand's lit up, I can stay on. However, these are for driving lights, so my requirement is not to have them on all the time. So I'm gonna go back in here, aux switches, aux 3, put it in ignition mode, and I don't want to recall last state. If I'm driving to a campsite and it's late and I got my lights on, when I turn off the engine, if I start it back up and leave again at dark, I'll just turn the lights back on. I don't like it recalling last state. So right now, boom, I'm done. So now I got my switch. Remember, aux 3 and 4 are 15 amp, 1 and 2 are 40 amp. And there you have it. That was the KC Highlights bracket and the really reasonably priced nightlights for $19 and some change a pair. I am not sponsored by anybody. And this is my first video, so be kind in the comments. Remember, my daughter will be judging me. All right, thanks everyone. I'm now going to talk about another feature I'll be uploading later on today. Thank you. Remember to like and subscribe because I will try to add more videos about cool little things I found out about the new Gladiator. Thanks.